Hi everyone, it's Bree Coleman here with the Dickinson County Nature Center. Today we are here to continue our series on commonly confused animals. So we started off with porcupines and hedgehogs, but Ashley and I thought it would be fun to travel into the insect world to talk about two commonly mistaken creatures, but also very misunderstood animals that are beneficial to our ecosystems. So let's see what we're talking about today. We are going to be talking about our wasp right here and our bee right here. So they do have a lot of similarities, as you can see. So they both have 6 legs, 1, 2, 3, and then they have 3 more on that side, and 1, 2, 3, and 3 more on that side. And they both have sets of antennae, 2 antennas here, 1, 2, 1, 2. They both have a set of wings, 1, 2 wings, 1, 2 wings, and they both have heads, thoraxes, and abdomens. However, now you look at them and you can tell their body shapes are very different. So now let's look at that. So we're going to look at this wasp right here. We see his legs here. He has long, rounded legs. Whereas if you jump over here, you can look at the bee's legs and you can see that they're almost flat and they're not rounded. And then if you look at its hind legs, most bees will have some sort of pollen pouches in the back of their legs so that they can gather pollen and help to pollinate to keep their food source alive. So there's one difference, their leg shape. So if you're ever wondering if it's a bee or a wasp, you could look at their leg shape. So rounded, long legs, and kind of flat, shorter legs. Another thing you could do is look at their body shape. So like I said, they both have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen, right? Head, thorax, abdomen. However, let's look at the shape between the thorax and the abdomen. So usually our wasps are going to have a really defined waistline. So if you look here at this wasp, you can see that there's a large gap between the abdomen and the thorax. So he has a really defined waist. However, if you look here, that gap on this European honeybee is not as prominent or large. Or if you think of other bees like our bumblebee, those are really rounded kind of bees. Their waists are not as defined. So if you ever find an insect that's yellow and black with a really defined waist, that very well could be a wasp. So now let's continue to make our comparisons. So what other things do you see different? Can you talk to your friends and family you're watching this with? What are some other differences? Did you guys notice that this guy is really, really hairy? And this guy, he has little tiny hairs on him, but he's not as hairy as our honeybee. So he has hair here. If you look here, there's hair. If you look further down, there's hair. Whereas here, he only has maybe a little bit up on his thorax, maybe a little on his head if you look really close. So one is hairy and one is not. And that has to do a little bit about how they've adapted and what they eat and what they need to survive. So our honeybees over here, they have adapted to be pollinators and nectar eaters. So they help to pollinate the flowers they get nectar out of. So having these hairs in the pollen pouches help them to gather the pollen and move it from flower to flower. Whereas these guys, they don't really need that because they typically don't drink nectar. Sometimes they are pollinators, but as you can see, they're not as probably going to be as effective because they aren't going to be able to pick up as much pollen. So some of the similarities are pretty outstanding. So they actually are grouped into the same order. So scientists use a break up our animals into smaller categories so they're easier to study. So they're both in kingdom Animalia, they're both in phylum Arthropoda, they're both in class Insect, and they're both in the order of Hymenoptera. However, this is where they kind of break down. So I've created this exact slide for a bee talk I did. So the family of wasps aren't on here because they are not part of the bee family. So they're part of Vespidae, and that includes our wasps. Our honeybees and our bumblebees are part of Apidae. I talked about commonly misunderstood bees in this one, so I didn't talk about Apidae because people know about our honeybees and our bumblebees. But so we'd have Apidae here and Vespidae here, which is going to be our wasps. So our order Hymenoptera includes bees, wasps, and ants because they are all very similar. However, ants can't sting or fly. They still have a lot of common characteristics. So here is where the breakdown happens. So from order Hymenoptera, bees, wasps, and ants. Down here, they are broken into different families. So that's where the differences are kind of made, is when you get down to this family area. So once again, the Venn diagram, if you watched my my butterflies and moths, I encouraged you guys to make a Venn diagram to talk about relationships between two different animals. So I thought I would make another Venn diagram so you guys could see the differences and the similarities. So this center column right here, that is our similarities. So they both have 3 body parts, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. They are both beneficial to the environment. They are both capable of stinging. They both have 2 pairs of wings. They both may utilize nectar. And then some of our differences, this is unique to wasps. They're slender bodies that are usually linear. Hairless typically. They can sting you multiple times and not pass away. They don't lose their stinger when they sting. They are more aggressive typically. They typically will eat insects. And when they fly, their legs will usually hang down as they fly around. So things that are unique to bees are they have thicker bodies that are usually hairy. They sting once and then they die and they lose their stinger. So they don't sting as often as a wasp or a hornet would. They're fairly docile. They like to eat nectar, and sometimes most species when they fly with their legs more tucked up into their body. However, sometimes they dangle depending on the species. So that's my Venn diagram of the similarities and differences of bees and wasps. So I want you guys to remember that both bees and wasps are important. So the benefits of wasps are they help control insect populations, which in return helps us to decrease the amount of pesticides we need for our crops. And some wasps even help to pollinate. So without the fig wasp, we wouldn't have figs. So if you like a fig Newton once in a while, you can thank a wasp for that. And then the benefits of bees. Now, I think the benefits of bees is everywhere in the world, but I just want to reiterate that they pollinate 35% of the world's food crops, which in return probably equates to about 80% of the food you buy in the store. Because of the food crops that we use, they're used in a lot of byproducts in our foods that we purchase. They pollinate 3/4 of all flowering plants. So 75% of flowering plants rely on insect pollinators, and they provide food for other animals higher in the food chain. So both wasps and bees are very important to our ecosystems. All right, I want to thank you guys for listening to my talk. I've really enjoyed spending time with you again. And I want you to remember that as the summer rolls around, to be patient with our insect friends. So our bees, our butterflies, and our ants, because they are all beneficial in some way or another. Thank you and have a wonderful day.